Okay, cool. Awesome. I really enjoyed that conversation. I love talking baseball with you.
Baseball's fun.
Yeah. Now,
You want to keep doing it?
Let's talk. Yeah, we should. And we should talk about something maybe less fun.
Yeah.
In your Chicago White Sox in AL Central.
Something more depressing.
And you know what? We talked about Yasiel Puig. And interestingly enough, Yasiel Puig, I guess the White Sox were interested in him.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I think there was some weird rumor it was James Shields for Yasiel Puig, which was...
Really? That was the name?
There was some rumor, and people were calling bullshit to it. I just saw that was the only name.
Okay.
That the Dodgers were desperate for pitching, so they would give up James Shields for that.
Yeah.
I would, if that was out there, I think Rankin would have done it, because I mean that's an easy move for pushing a guy in James Shields who you got for kind of nothing and has done nothing for your team, and he did kind of bounce back there a little. But with Puig, I mean, you have so much potential there. But yeah, no, with the Sox, I mean, it's just you didn't make a single move. You made one move at the deadline for
Zach Duke. Yeah,
moving Zach Duke. But outside of that, no actual move to help this team either for good or better.
I'm very glad you brought up that point, because that's what we're going to get into. But I have to wholeheartedly disagree with you on the whole James Shields, Yasiel Puig thing. I would not trade for Puig. Because of the conversation we had before, that's one of the reasons he's just a jag-off.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair but I mean, you're giving up James Shields, who's basically worthless to this team.
Hey, now.
This year?
Okay, yeah. He came up when he first got with the White Sox. No. When he first came up with the White Sox, he was awful. Dog garbage.
No,
I
agree.
Bad. But his last 8 starts, he looks like the James Shields of old. Honestly, he's been one of their most consistent starters. You have Sale, Quintana, Shields. That's pretty good.
He does. No, I'm not saying that. But, I mean, the Sox are out of the playoff race.
Right.
I'll say that.
Right.
And you can unload a contract that he has, I think, 4 years,
He's got a player
million.
option, but he's not gonna opt out of his remaining 2 years. Because he get paid
$21 million. So, I mean, you can move that contract. I know the Padres are paying some of that. You're going to move that contract. You're going to bring in a guy in Puig, who I think has a fairly reasonable contract there. And, if he doesn't hit that potential... Oh, well, you're getting rid of a contract there, and Shields isn't going to help this team make a playoff run. This team's out of the playoffs.
All right, we got to talk about this. We got to talk about this because the White Sox have been in this position, it seems like every single year since they made the playoffs. The last made the playoffs in 2008.
Yeah, and that brief small appearance in 2008.
It's like they like going for it, or they're the idea of going for it, and they want their fans to believe that they're good enough to go for it, but yet... realistically, they're never that good.
In the past 16 years, we made the playoffs 3 times.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's easy as that. I think we've been in second or first place like 6 times out of the past 16 years, maybe 7. I mean, this team has never been able to get over that hump.
Yeah.
We've always been competitive, and they've always wanted to be competitive, but we've always been around, barely under 500.
What doesn't make any sense to me, I'm not a general manager, I don't know this. And Rick Hahn, honestly, he's a very smart guy. And to me, if Rick Hahn wasn't overshadowed by Kenny Williams and he didn't have to answer to Reinsdorf every single time he wanted to make a move or do anything, I feel like the White Sox would be in a better position than now. When they signed Morneau, I thought it was a great signing because he was so underrated. He's cheap, like $3 million.
A cheap guy who might have a resurgent career.
Yeah, and
resurgent bounce back. Well, so far.
His last 2 seasons, if you looked at it, he was really productive before he got hurt. And all of his concussions, but that's a different story. But still, that was a nice move, and they obviously got off to that 18-9 start or whatever. 2 Chicago baseball teams were the best in baseball in April, and it was really awesome. And then all of a sudden, they came back to earth. And then you look back, and it's like, okay, they traded for Todd Frazier, and then around the deadline, they were thinking about trading Todd Frazier. It's like, And then they went and, like I said, signed Morneau. At that point, by the deadline, you realize they were out of the playoff race. And they kept him. And let's see, another guy, David Robertson.
Melky, too.
And Melky. We'll get into that, too, because he's an interesting name. So what I want to ask you is, are the White Sox right now, okay, what's their next step? Are they going to trade a Chris Sale, Jose Quintana this offseason, or are they going to do what they always do and try and go for it?
I think they're going to go for it, but the weird thing is they don't really go for it. They bring in a lot of guys with name power, but they never bring in guys that they never make a huge splash in free agency. Because if you look at this payroll in the past 11 seasons, since
they're a cheap organization, no doubt about it.
Well, the year after
in a pretty decent market.
The year after we won the World Series, they were 4th in baseball. 2007, they were 5th. then 12th, 7th, 5th, 11th, 8th, and then now in 2014, 20th, 15th, and 15th. We haven't gone out and made a huge splash in free agency in I don't know how long. I think it was probably around that 2005 year where we went out and got that big name, that top 5 name in free agency. We've never gone for that name. We've never gone for that player, and they kind of go for it, but they kind of put their foot half in because it's like, oh, we'll go get Todd Frazier, but Todd Frazier is a boomer bust guy, kind of like Adam Dunn. You're kind of looking at a guy like David Robertson, who was a decent closer when he was with the Yankees, but he was good. He was overshadowed by Mariano Rivera. I mean, he was with Mo, so I mean, it's hard to say he was a product of just being a great player. Melky Cabrera has been up and down, dealt with steroids.
Issue that's in the past.
But but what I'm saying is, he didn't have that same name recognition because he did have some tainted legacy behind him.
And his first 2 months with the White Sox were god awful. Yeah. But overall, he was a really nice signing. Yeah, he was a very nice signing. Probably their most productive bat over the last few seasons. With the White Sox, it perplexes me every single year because they go out and make all these splashes, and I feel like they do the wrong things. But it's hindsight's 2020, right? But with the deadline, you see how quick the Yankees turned around just right away. They had 2 really high value arms, and they moved them both. Mm-hmm. And they also were able to move a guy with an expiring contract who's old and got some value for him in Carlos Beltran. Doesn't that excite you? Let me ask you this. As a White Sox fan, if you could buy a jersey and it wasn't Chris Sale, who would it be?
Mark Burley.
It's very hard to do that. They don't have the consistent mainstays. And even this offseason, a guy like Todd Frazier, he might be gone.
I'll give you your answer. Tim Anderson.
Okay,
because he's got my last name, so then if he's off the team, boom, there we go.
Well, Tim Anderson is something very exciting to build on.
Oh yeah, he's been fantastic. And the thing is with the White Sox organization is, I don't want them to trade Sale or Quintana, and I think that's a drastic move there. But then again, it's like
you don't want Quintana or Sale traded.
I don't want Sale traded, but
you could trade Quintana. You think?
I think you could move Quintana if this team truly falls off. But with how much they've been competitive and how good this rotation can be, I think you can keep those guys around. But the thing is those guys are still in their prime. Those guys aren't like over the hill. Those guys are still in their prime. I think Quintana's almost near the start of his prime.
He's still consistent.
So I mean, the thing with that is, why get rid of guys who are still in their prime that you could still build around in like 3 years? You got to build up this farm system that's terrible. We've always had low payroll and terrible farm systems. We never had that blue chip prospect. You never had a guy like a Mike Trout or a Chris Bryant.
Let me ask you this.
You never have a guy like
I'm asking you lots of stuff. No, I hear you.
You have a guy like a White Sox, or like, White Sox can bring up this guy.
Yeah, you're counting down the days until he's called up. Right.
It's like, we brought in Ken Griffey Jr.
With the White Sox. Okay, it's very hard. I guess earlier in the season, right, there was a King's ransom apparently, and I air quote King's ransom because we don't know what the package was for Chris Sale, and they flat out said no to it. Mm-hmm. I would be interested to see the names in that, but from the Red Sox. With the White Sox though, I feel like there are a lot of teams that they could work with this offseason. And Rick Hahn said it himself. He didn't really feel like he should move guys at the deadline because it restricts him, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you look at it, and he put it in a really good perspective, and it made sense. He's a smart guy. He said that by the deadline, you have really limited teams who are willing to go out and make a move for top line players to go for a playoff push. Compared to the offseason, you have multiple teams who think that they can at least compete. And with Sale, I guess, they were limited at the deadline, was what I'm saying, because they weren't going to get a major league caliber talent right away that they could plug in. They would have to bank on the prospects in return. And Chris Sale is a for sure thing. Prospects are always a gamble.
No, I agree. And the only thing that would make me decent with a trade would be a Red Sox package of a
Yoan Moncada
or both of those guys.
What about Chris Sale and Moncada straight up? Would you do that?
God, no.
No?
I wouldn't do that at all.
It's pretty close, though. Because Moncada,
name a better left-handed pitcher that's not named Kershaw in the MLB.
I agree. Chris Sale is super valuable. But you look at Moncada and all of the tools that
one
he has.
One injury takes that away, though.
Sure. And nothing's guaranteed.
Exactly.
But this player looks to be as complete a player, a mainstay of a player as there is in the major leagues right now. Moncada is the guy. So you get him. You get a mainstay position player for the next 15 years. Doesn't that sound nice?
You don't know if he's gonna be one, though.
Yeah, but he's like I said.
See, Chris
you can't
Sale,
see the future, but still,
Chris Sale is an ace for the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, he is a ace. He's a guy that you can lock down, and I mean, he's just dominant. You know, he's been dominant this year. He's been dominant. He was dominant before. I mean, he just needs to find that consistent spot where he can strike out guys and also pitch for contact to guys. And I think that's the only big struggle that he has. But still, I mean, outside of that, if he never figures that out, he's still one of the top arms in baseball.
Man, it's so easy to talk White Sox. It's so easy because there's so many things going on with this organization. It's been such a weird year.
Chris Sale should not be traded. I would feel just wrong if we traded him.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't want Chris Sale out, but I think at this point in your organization, you have to at least consider it.
See, but I think with you mentioned that though. Carlos Beltran, a guy who I think is near 37, 38, 39. Yeah. I mean, he's getting a return of, I think, the Rangers' 4th pick in 2014. I mean, you can get a guy like that. I know he's been struggling for the Rangers, but still, you get a guy with a lot of potential who is that blue chip of a prospect for a guy who's 39 years old.
That's
and we have a guy like David Robertson where, the Nationals needed a late inning closer. I know they got
going back
Rankin, but but you still needed a guy in the bullpen there. You get a guy, or you have a guy in Todd Frazier. I mean, that's a right-handed power bat right there. You don't trade him. Melky's a great contact hitter. I mean, there's so much that you could have done for
the White
team.
Sox, I guess, had believed, and this goes back to before last year, the offseason going in, there was a 3-year window for them to win, and that's why they signed Melky to that contract. That's why they this year went out and got Todd Frazier. They believed Adam LaRoche would still be here. Like I said, though, what a weird season for the White Sox. It goes back to Chris Sale cutting up jerseys because he didn't want to wear the throwbacks, and Drake LaRoche being a team leader he's like 11 years old, has his own locker, and it's a joke. It's so funny.
And one thing, I mean, you look at a guy, you basically a 2-man GM situation in Chicago with the White Sox. All right, in Rick Hahn, who basically has the job, but he always has to answer Kenny Williams. And you have a crazy owner in Jerry Reinsdorf who keeps bringing in old players and won't trade those players at the deadline.
I just feel like he just doesn't care.
Yeah, no, but the thing is you got an owner who just wants to bring people in the seats and tries to make a playoff run with what they have and just bring in.
Except he restricts payroll.
Yeah, it restricts payroll. But then you have a guy who has the GM title, who has to answer to another guy, and then they keep bringing old players so they won't trade at the trade deadline. Weirdly enough, sounds like another team run by Jerry Reinsdorf and the Chicago Bulls brings in older players, won't trade him the deadline. You have 2 GMs.
Yeah,
it's a mess. I think the clear problem here is Jerry Reinsdorf, and I think Rick Hahn's a capable GM, but he's never able to do his job.
Well, unfortunately, until Reinsdorf ultimately sees his end,
basically.
It's going to be nobody else running this team.
I'm not rooting for Jerry Reinsdorf to die, but
and it really, I mean, it's
God.
They just got to take a direction with the White Sox. They just have to pick a lane, and this goes back to even in May when I was talking about this too. I'm tired, and I'm not even a White Sox fan. I feel like at this point you're sick of being the mediocre team that's we're really excited. We won the winter meetings. We won the offseason. And yet they're just mediocre again and again and again. So with this whole thing, to wrap up this conversation, because we're kind of rattling off, but it's so easy to talk about the White Sox because they're so easy to bash.
You want to talk about the Cubs?
Well, we could go on for years with them. But so they didn't do anything at the deadline besides move Zach Duke. And I understand, like I said, Rick Hahn had his reasons not to make a move because he feels like he can have more flexibility this offseason. But it's really disappointing when you see that guys like Justin Morneau still on the team, Avi Garcia still on the team, David Robertson still on the team, even Todd Frazier if you want to include him. It's just please just pick a lane.
You saw teams that were desperate though. You see the Red Sox that needed some pitching help. You saw the Nationals who were truly desperate and needed bullpen help there. You saw the Rangers go out and get basically, they got Beltran and they got Lucroy. And I know a guy like Beltran has still been fantastic.
He's valuable.
And it'd be tough to play a guy like Todd Frazier in Texas because of Adrian Beltre at third. But I mean, then again, you can play one of them at DH. I mean, I think there was definitely a move out there that could have been made that could have helped this future of the White Sox.
We don't want to be downers here, right? We don't want to be like major White Sox downers, but at the same time, it's just you look at what's in front of you.
You need a new hitting coach, you need a new manager, you need a new owner.
Well,
to me,
yeah. But hey, positives, and then we'll wrap it up. Carson Fulmer looks like he's going to crap his pants every single time he's in a big spot on the mound in the big leagues right now. But at the same time, you can see that there's potential there. One quick thing on Carson Fulmer: if he's going to be a starter, why not stretch him out in the minors and let him start. This year is nothing. Right now is nothing.
I completely agree.
So
I have no idea.
stop bringing him in as a reliever. That's one qualm that I have. And then another thing is Zach Collins, the catcher that they drafted, and Zach Birdie. Those two players, that's something to be excited about. Birdie throws 100, could be your future closer. Collins looks like 10th overall pick. Looks like he can be a pretty, I believe he was the 10th overall pick. I could be wrong. He looks like he could be a pretty decent catcher in the major leagues. Something to be excited about. Tim Anderson, Tyler Saladino. Maybe you re-sign Brett Lawrie. You figure it out.
You still have a dominant ace in Chris Sale. You still have a fantastic number 2, one of the best number 2s in the league in Quintana.
When is it that you stop trying to build around those two and try and actually build for something in the future? You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is Chris Sale's not that old. Quintana's not that old.
Right, but they're wasting their prime years right now. And I feel bad for Sale.
They are.
But all right,
I think you still have enough time where you can keep them in their prime.
Overall, I think the White Sox are going to be very, very active this offseason.
They better be.
And it's going to probably piss off a lot of White Sox fans. I have a feeling that either Quintana or Sale are going to get traded.
I would be fine with Quintana. I honestly, I'd be fine with either one. I don't want both go. But the thing is I agree they need to pick a lane, and if they don't, that's going to be detrimental to this team.